Hey, this is Chris with Phoenix Gaming. Today we're going to talk about Warhammer 40k, specifically Blood Angels. This will be the first episode in a series about Blood Angels. This is going to be the first in a series that's going to detail my journey to Hawaii. We're going to talk about what pulled me back into 40k, why Blood Angels is the route I chose to take, and where I'm starting with the army. We're going to finish it off with a look at enhancements, stratagems, and we're going to do a unit highlight where we pick one unit and we kind of talk about how we could use it on the table. One thing I did want to ask the community, what are your thoughts about doing some sort of hobby hangout? And that would be where I stream with a model that I'm either building or painting, and we hang out, we do a group chat, maybe on Discord or just on the stream. You let me know if that sounds like something you would all like to do, and we'll set up a day for it and we'll get it figured out. Last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to Military Gaming Command. As always, militarygamingcommand.org. They do great work in supporting veterans. I myself am a veteran and I appreciate everything they do. For those of you that are new to my channel, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Chris. I've been a Warhammer 40,000 player since 3rd edition, so early mid-90s. I do a lot of rules-focused videos that break down interactions in different games. It's not a 40k-centric channel, although that is how I got my start. I've done faction-based series on how I like to play certain armies for multiple games now. I've done some for Firefight, I've done some for Warhammer. And I have a pretty sizable library on Drukhari, so if there's questions you might have about playing Drukhari, some of it is a little dated because I stopped doing Drukhari content towards the beginning of the edition, but some of the strategies that I implement will still work well. So feel free to check that out. I will say that 10th has not been a very good edition for me. I have not enjoyed a lot of the facets of 10th edition. So that being said, I did step away from it. I haven't touched any kind of 40k since November, so we're going on quite a few months at this point. I've actually sold all of my models with a very, very small exception, and I now have to build a new army, which is gonna, lead us to the start of this episode. And before we dig in, I just want to give a heads up if you're new to my channel. I'm not a lore guy. I'm not going to sit here and talk to you about the different things that happen in lore, things like that. I'm a mechanics and game first player, so a lot of my decisions and discussions are going to be predicated on fitting my playstyle and how I like to do things. That doesn't mean I won't do things that are lore friendly. That doesn't mean I will. It just means that's not my first thought process when addressing what I like to bring in an army. For those of you who have been around me for a while, you're probably asking yourselves, why on earth would you choose Space Marines? You have ragged on Space Marine players the entire time you've had this channel. Even when you stopped playing Warhammer, you were still teasing Space Marine players. And it's true, I've been almost exclusively a Xenos player for about 25 years. I've, dabbled with some Chaos Space Marines and Demons, and they've even put Space Marines on the table. But I would never say I was a Space Marine player. I was Orcs and Drukhari because nothing else ever lasted long. It was, I need to take a break from this for a little bit, so I'm going to screw around with something else. And then I always gravitate back towards Orcs and Dark Eldar. I am building an army for Hawaii, and I wanted to build something I've never really played before. I wanted to build something that, while I could make it work inside my playstyle, pushed me away from what I always do. As a person who's played Orcs for the full time I've been playing 40k, I wanted to step away from Orcs. And, I've played Drukhari almost exclusively up until I stopped playing in November. And again, I just wanted to kind of get away from that. And honestly, the funny thing is that Blood Angels don't necessarily get me away from it, but they get me away from it. They allow me to, interact the way I like to interact, go fast, hit hard, but do it with a Space Marine chassis. So I just wanted to give them a check out. My son watched Secret Level. He fell in love with Space Marines. We've watched all the Space Marine animations on Warhammer TV. So that's how I ended up with Space Marines. And it was ultimately between White Scars and Blood Angels. And honestly, Death Company is what made it Blood Angels. Because what's going to happen is after this Hawaii tournament, I'll likely give the whole army to my son. And that'll be that. I can move on. Although, who knows? I might end up keeping it and just getting back into 40k we will see. I don't have high expectations for it, but I'm open-minded enough to go, I've had a good break. Let's give it an honest try. I did look at the new Combat Patrol. It looks pretty solid, but I know what I'm about. I know what I want, and I'm going to tell you what I want, what I really, really want. I saw the Astorath datasheet, I saw the Sanguinor datasheet, and then I saw the Death Company datasheet, and was just, this is it. This is where I want to be. So the first things I bought were a box of Death Company with jump packs, the Sanguinor, Astorath, which he's very handsome. You probably can't see him very well, but that is an exceptional model. I actually like the way they look. I just really like the way Drukhari and Orcs played, so I never really looked into it. I am playtesting lists so I can get my build buy list created for the next 12 months. The Hawaii tournament is I think it's in January, somewhere in there, sometime between January and March of next year. So like early next year is going to be a very busy time. I'm going to have a Kings of War GT that I want a ticket to, that I want to go to. I'm going to have a Adepticon where I'm going to be playing Firefight, and I'm going to be playing Kings of War. And then I have this Hawaii 40k GT, and I may end up doing some sort of 40k event while I'm at Adepticon, depending on how this goes. But, I'm going to be playtesting lists so I can build out what it is I want to buy, build, paint over the next 12 months. I've got a year. I'm not much of a hobbyist, so for me, this is a long enough time that I can go, okay, I can have an army built, I can have it painted, and it can look good. I don't have to just last minute cram it on the table. Everything I am testing and playing is predicated around running the Liberator Assault Group. I looked at a lot of different detachments when I committed to this Hawaii tournament. And, let's talk about how I got committed real quick. The way it worked is, one of my friends, Bailey over at Dankless, had said, hey, there's a tournament for 40k in Hawaii, you should go. And I told him, I don't even have an army anymore, I'm not committing to that. Well, he had been harassing me, and one day we were on the phone, and my wife was in the room, and all she heard was me say, I am not going to Hawaii. And immediately she said, what's in Hawaii? And as soon as that came out of her mouth, I knew that was it. That was going to be it. I was committed. I had to go because she was going to want to go to Hawaii. So that's how we got on the Hawaii trip. Like I said, I know what I'm about. So when I saw that Liberator Assault Group, and I saw that it gets +1 attack in melee and +2 strength in melee on the charge, I thought, man, this plays exactly how I like to play. And then I started looking, like I said, at the Death Company and said, oh, these look really funny in this detachment. This is where I'm going to sit. This is just what I'm going to play. I don't care. And, my goal is, hey, 3 turns. 3 turns, the game's over. Whoever wins, wins. But in 3 turns, we're going to be able to be done early. We're going to go get a beer. We're going to walk the beach. We're going to do whatever. And we're going to have fun. Like I said, with the Liberator Assault Group, the first thing that came to mind was, man, this is really funny. And I do tend to play kind of a meme style. And when I say that, what I mean is, I tend to find things that I think are fun and good and bring those. And a lot of times it will shock people. I showed up to a Warhammer Open, a big Games Workshop event, with an almost all bike orc list before all the knobs on bikes got thrown out to the dumpster. I did pretty well. And at the same time, a lot of people got to the table, saw my list, and they were just, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do with this. So I tend to just kind of march to my own drum, and you're going to see that maybe as we go. I don't pay attention to meta. I don't pay attention to what people are doing. I just find the units I like, I play them, and then I try to get enough reps in that I just get good with them. Blood Angels have a lot of units that can lean into that Liberator Assault Group, and they can create an army and list that's predicated on being able to threaten a good portion of the board. When you've got that many jump pack options, and their melee can be that devastating, you can threaten large areas of the table with very hard-hitting units. And unless your opponent has fights first, or some kind of way to mitigate what's coming at them, you can control the board without having to charge. Interesting how you can use your threat range to kind of dictate the flow of the game. And this is all theoretical knowledge right now because I haven't played since November, and I haven't played this army ever. So in theory, I look at it kind of like I look at incubi. This is sign language for incubi, swinging the sword. I look at it like I looked at incubi in my raider. I could keep them in the raider so they don't get shot off the board, but at any point they could come out 8 inches and then go charge, or 7 inches, whatever it was. They could get out and go charge, and they could threaten a much greater area than people realized, especially in the newer detachment where you could move the raider and then disembark and then charge. So I kind of look at my jump pack troops in a very similar way. I can bring a lot of jump pack bodies. The Death Company can bring, I think it's 2 Eviscerators and 3 Power Fists in a 10 model squad. So that's still 5 bodies that are bringing -2 2 damage attacks at strength 9 or 10 on the charge, depending on which profile. That's a lot of high strength, solid AP. It's going to push Custodes to their invuln, and it's multi-damage, so unless they do something to reduce the damage, you're going to get a lot through. It's going to be one of those where if you can't roll hot, roll lots. Death Company re-roll hits. So again, having these different options where I can go, okay, well here's Death Company, but then here's just regular jump pack assault troops. Sure, they only get chainswords, but they become strength 6 chainswords on the charge with 5 attacks each, and the sergeant can still take a power fist. So again, I'm just looking at the volume. I'm looking at, does it have at least 1 AP, things like that. And then you can couple that with cheaper support units and chaff units for screening, objective holding, and things like that. So you can have a pretty flexible army list that can score, perform removal, and control the board. I'm not going to cover my list today. I'll probably try to get that done either tomorrow or Thursday. I might do it later today, do a whole video about my current list and what I'm going to be playing this weekend. And then after this weekend, I'll probably talk about maybe some changes that I want to make to the list, because I'm going to be playing against Tyranids and against, I believe, Space Marines this weekend. So we're going to talk about the Liberator Assault Group enhancements. Again, this is my theoretical. I can't give you any practical, but after this week and next week, I'll be able to give you a bit more practical opinion on it. So just by reading it, here's what I see. And we're just going to go in order. Speed of the Primarch, 25 points. Once per battle, the bearer's unit gets fight first. Worth it. I would hands down pay 25 points for fight first on any fighting unit in this game. Maybe not any, but any kind of hard-hitting melee unit. I would pay 25 points to give Incubi fight first, for example. I would pay 25 points to give Berserkers with a captain fight first, or whatever he's called, Karn. So these are things that I would pay points to give them fight first, because it's worth it, even if it's once per game. So being able to give it to a Death Company captain who's attached to a 10 model squad of Death Company, worth it. That's so many dice, and that is such a great charge deterrent. What are you going to charge them with? You're going to charge them with Witches and Lilith? Well, Lilith might live. She might, just because if you pop your 3-up invuln, like, we're just playing the dice game. But if she doesn't pop the 3-up invuln, they're probably all dying mathematically without looking and doing the math. Fights first with that volume on a 10 model squad is absurd, because you're going to have 5 chainswords. At 5 attacks each, that's 25 attacks. And then you're going to have 20 attacks coming out of your Power Fist Eviscerator profile. So you're looking at almost 50 dice, 45 plus the captain. So you're going to be over 50 dice. That's if you charge. If they charge, you can still get an additional attack. That is a thing you can do. It's one of the strats, which we'll talk about. So again, you still could potentially be looking at 50 dice. So to me, Speed of the Primarch, auto-include for this detachment. Have to take it. Rage-Fueled Warrior. Bearer's unit gains sustained hits 3 once per game. This is one I look at and I'm like, this could be really good. A high-volume unit like Death Company, who also have baked-in rerolls, they can make sure you get 6s, and you can probably guarantee that whatever you're fighting is going away. It's a good enhancement. I just don't know how I feel about the points yet. I do have it in my list, but I don't know how I feel about it until I get it on the table. Icon of the Angel is 20 points. Each time an enemy unit excluding monsters or vehicles within engagement range of the bearer's unit are selected to fall back, models in the enemy unit must make a desperate escape test as if it were battle shocked. And when doing so, if it's battle shocked, it gets modified again. So this is just the witch's ability. You can give the witch's ability to a character and or squad that it's attached to while the character's there. This one I'm mixed on. It's situationally good. There's going to be times where you're going to be like, man, I'm glad I took this. And there's going to be games where you're like, wow, this is 20 points that could have maybe done something else. If you've got the extra character and the extra points, there's no reason not to take it. I wouldn't necessarily take something else instead of. 20 points is hard to spend in Space Marines and really in 10th edition 40k. If you're at like 1960, rather than trying to shuffle units around, if you've got the character and the unit it can go on, you might consider just putting the icon on it. And then the last enhancement is Gift of Foresight. And this is a once per battle round. After making a hit, wound, or save roll, you can change one die to a 6. And to me, that's worth it. It's worth 15 points, especially if you've got the character. The way my list is constructed, I don't have a character that could run it. I'd have to bring a third character that isn't epic hero or named. And that's just not how my list is built yet. That doesn't mean it won't be at some point in the near future. But my first, here we're going to try this list. My first go at it, character-wise, it's Astaroth, the Sanguinor, it's Chaplain on Jump Pack, and it's a Jump Pack Death Company Captain. And the Captain has Speed of the Primarch, and then the Chaplain has Rage Fueled Warrior. That's just the way it is. I could be wrong. Like I said, this is all theoretical. It's not practical yet because I've got to knock the rust off. I've got to see what the new mission pack is going to look like, things like that. So there's too many variables for me to go, this is definitely good. But I don't mind telling you that at first glance, I think that this is like Speed of the Primarch, very good. Now we're going to look at the stratagems for the Liberator Assault Group. And before we dig into that, the first thing I want to say is that the double effect stratagems for this detachment are super cool. You've got a few stratagems that give you this or that, but if you give into the red thirst, which just means you take a battle shock, like you just battle shock, you just get them both. So that's pretty cool. I like that. A good example is one gives you lethal hits or lance. So you could use it defensively, right? If you're charging me, I could give myself lethal hits. But if I charge you, I might decide I want lance. Maybe I charge tonight. Like I might want lance and lethal hits. So I might go, okay, we're going to take both. So I'm just going to battle shock my unit just so I can make sure this knight goes away. So that's kind of how I look at that. I think it's really neat. I like and again, I'm not a lore guy, but I do like the kind of flavor that it brings to it. It's pretty cool. And I think overall it gives you some nice tactical flexibility where you can go, okay, which do I need? Do I need both? Am I ready to sacrifice scoring in order to gain these benefits? Angelic Grace is a 5-up Feel No Pain against mortals. You use it when you receive the mortal. So you get to use it reflexively or defensively. So if you, in any phase, you do mortals to me, I can just be like, ha, Angelic Grace, Feel No Pain against mortals. It's not going to win you games, most likely. But it's a great tool to have in your toolbox, especially with devastating wounds having been changed back to mortals. Like, because they are mortals, again, even though they don't splash, that is a great tool to have in your toolbox where if you hit something that just gets a bunch of dev wounds, you can say, okay, well, at least I get to roll a die. And then you have Armor of Contempt. It's Armor of Contempt. It's obnoxious. It's annoying. I'm sure I'm going to use it. I don't know what to tell you. I know as a Drukhari player, there were plenty of times where Armor of Contempt just made me want to go jump off a bridge. I was trying to think of a way to say that wasn't very graphic because I don't want YouTube to get me. And I don't mean that literally, but it's just one of those, our local Marine players, that's every turn, Armor of Contempt, Armor of Contempt. And I don't care, I know you're going to use it so I can work around it. So it's one of those, to me, I see it as a tool in my toolbox, but not something that I'm going to rely on. Savage Echoes, and you use that in your opponent's charge phase. One unit that was charged, and that unit gets either +1 attack or +1 strength, but you can battle shock it to get both. I find this strat very interesting because it's a defensive strat, you have to charge me in order for me to get bonus attack and bonus strength. And I understand why. Give one of your units at least part of your red thirst or your detachment ability, even if you got charged, so it's not 100% offensive. You get a little bit of a reactionary use for it. And like I said, it's still good, especially when you have Speed of the Primarch. Maybe you get charged by something where you need that volume, and you just go, okay, I'm going to Savage Echoes, I'm going to Battle Shock these boys. We're going to get +1 strength, we're going to get +1 attack, and we're just going to throw a bunch of Strength 5 Chainswords at you. We're going to throw some Strength 9 Power Fists at you and some Strength 8 Eviscerators at you, and we're going to see what happens. So I like this strat. I think it's very useful. But I think this is a strat that requires a little bit of precision or finesse to get the most out of it. This is probably one that you won't use every game, but when you use it, you're going to be glad you had it. And I think it's a really good way to try to prevent getting tar pitted by things. If you've got something that doesn't do a ton of damage, and you get stuck in with it, because remember, especially if it's something like Death Company, fall back. They have special rules about falling back and having chaplains nearby. If you don't have a chaplain nearby, this might be a way to try to prevent you from getting tar pitted when you get charged. And then you have Red Rampage. It's in the fight phase. It's a unit that has not been selected to fight. That unit either gains lance or lethal hits, like I said earlier. You could Battle Shock it for both. I think this strat is insane. I think Death Company with Power Fists that are getting 4 attacks on the charge at strength 10, neg 2 damage with lance and lethals, and then you have 2 eviscerators. So you're looking at 20 attacks total that are strength 9 or better that reroll hits with lance and lethal for neg 2 damage. And Chainswords get 5 attacks at strength 6 with lance and lethals at AP 1. That's just so many dice. You know, and it all goes back to an expression that we have in our play group. If you can't roll hot, roll lots. So that's one of those where I'm curious to see if my brain is working the way it used to, and I can kind of process these things the way I used to. What are we at? November, December, January, February, March, April. So I'm going on 5 to 6 months without touching 40K at all. I haven't read a book. I haven't read a rule up until the last couple weeks. So we're going to see if I've still got it. We're going to knock some of that rust off. Then you have Aggressive Onslaught. You get Advance and Shoot or Advance and Charge, but you can Battle Shock for both. For me, this is just going to be Advance and Charge almost every time. You've got jump packs moving 12 inches with Advance and Charge. I love it. You're moving a minimum of 13 inches and a maximum of 18, and I just think that's really good. You've got 13 to 18 inches and a charge, and Death Company just does it so well. And with the Assault Intercessors, you can, with the jump packs, they do mortals on the charge. And then the Chaplain can do mortals on the charge, or when they fight, I think is actually when he does it. So you can have a squad that you could charge in there, do some mortals, activate them to fight, do some mortals, and then throw a bucket of dice. And getting Advance and Charge can get them where you need them. Oh no, I hit my mic. Hopefully that didn't pop through too bad. Relentless Assault gives you Fallback and Shoot or Fallback and Charge, Battle Shock for both. First of all, if you're falling back, you're just a coward. I'm joking, but that's not a big thing. That's not a big part of my game plan for this list and army. My big part of my game plan is to just keep applying pressure. A great opponent of mine recently told me the problem with playing against you is that you don't hammer and anvil, you only hammer. And it's true. It's just how I play. I don't anvil very well. You could call it a weakness. I do tend to just hammer. But, you know, in the words of TK, if all you have is a hammer, you goddamn better learn how to turn every problem into a nail. And if you don't know what that is, just look through my videos, you'll figure it out. But yeah, I think Relentless Assault is another way you can try to avoid tar pits. Potentially won't help your Death Company much if you have a lot of those like I plan to, so just keep that in mind. I do want to let everybody know there is 13% off until the 1st of July. I'm going to be celebrating my 3rd year as a content creator by giving a 10 plus 3 for 3 years, % off at my 4th Wall store until my actual official anniversary date, which is the 1st of July. So that's automatically applied in the store. It won't cover shipping, but whatever you order is going to be 13% off. And you can see on the screen here, that is the If You Can't Roll, Hot Roll Lots t-shirt. There's some other ones in there. There's some TK ones. So if you do know what TK is, we've got the hammer t-shirt. There's a link in the description. Feel free to check it out. Great way to support the channel. I appreciate it. We're going to wrap this up with a unit highlight. We're going to start with Astaroth. He is in my first draft of lists. It seemed like an auto take. He moves 12 inches because he's a jump pack boy. He's T4. He's got a 2-up save, 4-up invuln, 5 wounds, leadership 5-up, OC1. Like, he's a very standard character. He's a gorgeous model. I didn't realize how much I liked him until I built him. He doesn't have his wings like I showed you earlier. I'm going to paint the wings separate. I'm going to try to do this army because I have so much more time. I'm going to try to do this one a little bit nicer than some of my other armies in the past. He also just slaps. He gives the unit he's leading a 4-up fight on death. Of course, if they haven't fought, I'm not going to dig into the minutia of every rule. Some things I think are just going to be assumed. So if I'm like, hey, this gets a 4-up fight on death, it's assumed that you know that that's if they haven't already fought, because I don't think there's anything out there that interacts otherwise. And then models in this unit gain dev wounds on the charge. Again, Death Company, 50 dice, re-rolling hits, lots of dice with dev wounds, even just the chain swords. You're going to get 3 to 4 dev wounds on average just from the chain swords in a 5-man. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's pretty good. And if you double that, if you took 10, you're going to get 8. On average, you're going to get 7 to 8 dev wounds if you took a 10 model squad. Then if you coupled the fact that if you had Power Fist, your math isn't that far off. And you could basically just double that for Power Fist because you're not losing that many attacks, but you're getting 2 damage. So it's one of those where you might get 3, but it's actually going to be 6 with the Power Fist. And then because the Power Fist has higher strength, it's also just going to get more through. So if you look at it that way, you're going to average like 7 to 9 dev wounds if you've got a 10 model squad fully kitted out. And then you still have Astaroth to account for. And Homeboy slaps. He's 105 points. He is a chaplain, so that does affect the Death Company and their ability to fall back. He swings 6 attacks, so 7 on the charge, strength 7, neg 3, 2 damage. So again, he's going to add 2 to 4 dev wounds to that count. That unit, there's not much. It's not going to just like Control-Alt-Delete if it gets their full strength. He takes an already strong unit in Death Company with jump packs and makes them really scary. Just super scary. Because again, they reroll hits and charges innately. You can give them lance and lethal. You can give them advance and charge if you wanted to. And again, if you give them lance, that doesn't affect their dev wounds, but that does affect your damage output. Again, if you look at it this way, you've got strength 6 chain swords on the charge. With lance, you're going to wound 70-80% of the game on 4s, maybe 20% of the game on 5s, and that 20% would be like knights, chaos knights, and then, like I said, like Leman Russ, things like that. So it just, to me, yeah, he's crazy and so good. If you're playing this detachment, he's one of those things that I think you owe it to yourself to bring at least once. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this Friday I put him on the table and he just shits the bed and I'm just like, man, I got to make a video telling everybody I'm an idiot. And that's okay. Wouldn't be the first time. I do want to let everybody know in my next episode for Blood Angels, we're going to talk about my first list attempt and I'm going to do another unit highlight. And all the unit highlights are going to be on my list to start with, because I can tell you what's going to get the first few unit highlights. We're going to talk about the Sanguinor, we're going to talk about Astaroth, we're going to talk about Death Company. Those are going to be the first few. But there's some sleepers in there that I think get probably overlooked because of the fact that they're slow. I actually shot my list over to a guy who does play Marines competitively, and he was like, why would you take this? And I'm like, because I'm just like, I don't know, man. I look at it, I know what I think it should do, and we're going to see if it does that thing. A good example of that is aggressors. He was just like, I don't understand why you take aggressors in Blood Angels. And I was like, well, it's a lot of twin linked power fist attacks. And he was like, well, they got to get there. And it's like, we'll figure that out. We will burn that bridge when we get to it. Just the knowledge of what they do might be enough. So we'll see. I do want to give a big shout out to Andrew, Tony, and Daniel for the purchase of their 2 new TK tees. And I want to thank you to my Patreon and Fourth Wall supporters, Lord Wellingstone and Dan the Man. If you do wish to support my channel, you can do so by purchasing merchandise through Fourth Wall, or you can support me through Fourth Wall or Patreon as a subscriber. I don't do a lot for subscribers, and that's not because I don't care. It's because I want you to subscribe because you like the content, not because I'm bribing you. So if that's something you're interested in, again, I appreciate it, but I'm not going to twist your arm, which is why I save a lot of this stuff for the end of the video. And hopefully, you guys want to support me by getting t-shirts or whatever. I appreciate you. You have a great day.